The New York Knicks quit in Orlando last night, and something has to change fast.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
You are locked on to the New York Knicks. My name is Gavin Schall. I'm a New York City native and a credentialed media member that's been covering the Knicks for nearly a decade. This is Locked On Knicks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the number one sports network in the world. And this is your daily podcast on the New York Knicks, getting the most detailed insight into your favorite team at least 5 days a week. So be sure to join nearly 10,000 other Knicks fans in subscribing on YouTube, and thousands of more who have subscribed on their favorite podcast platforms, because it is the single best way you can help us grow the show and allow you to get the best insight on your favorite team every single day. And today's show is brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. On today's show, we are talking why this is a low point for the 25-26 New York Knicks. You hear the ambulance sirens in the background. They're probably heading straight for MSG because this is an emergency. Why the Knicks are desperately missing OG Anunoby. And in turn, their defense is quite broken at the moment, and concern for Landry Shamet, who appeared to separate his shoulder in the first quarter of this game. But we'll start off towards the end. The Knicks, early in the fourth, despite not looking very good, cut the deficit to 3. And then all these very, I'm trying to think of the right word, thin tent poles, like flailing tent poles that were propping them up in this game. Some amazing shot making from Jalen Brunson, some timely shots from Mikal Bridges, Cat picking it up a bit in the second half. Jordan Clarkson, he was maybe the one bright spot for me in this game. I thought, at least offensively, though he had some moments on defense, this was probably one of the better games he played the entire season. All those things sort of crashed down simultaneously. Nothing really emerged in their place to supplement the Knicks. They had zero chance of stopping Franz Wagner, who finished this game with 37 points in 34 minutes, 13-19 from the field, 4-6 from 3, 7-7 from the line, 7 assists, 6 rebounds. Probably, I might be forgetting one. Probably the single best game anyone has played against the Knicks this year. Without OG, the Knicks tried Mitchell Robinson on him, and that was a disaster. I will get into some of the synergy numbers as we go throughout, but this was about as poor of an individual defensive effort from Mitch that I've ever seen. And it's not really on him, because there's no world where, as special of a defender as he is, where he should be asked to guard someone like Franz Wagner, because that is just not really his game. And he doesn't have a chance in that matchup. Franz is just too quick, too skilled, and it is not what Mitch does best. Mike Brown put him in a bad position, and Franz Wagner absolutely cooked the New York Knicks. It also didn't help that Desmond Bane and Jalen Suggs both arguably had their best offensive games of the season. And again, the Knicks had a lot to do with that. Those guys also shot really well compared to how they have been shooting. And then the effort just died at a certain point defensively. There was one, was it when Jalen Suggs turned the corner on a dunk? I think it was on Mikal. Maybe there's one off a screen where there was just zero help. There was a certain point about halfway through the fourth quarter where you could tell a switch flipped, and the Knicks were no longer interested in competing. They were no longer interested in playing competitive NBA basketball. And at that point, the game was functionally done. It was a 24-9 Magic run in total. And you could pull any point in that run and tell me that the Knicks were just disinterested and they had essentially given up. And I would believe you. There were miscommunication issues. Every time the Knicks went zone, it felt like Orlando found an easy bucket. There was one particularly emblematic moment where I think it was Desmond Bane, I'm going to try to find it in my notes, was coming off a screen, and both Mikal and Yabu reacted to it and rushed out to Bane. And then Yabu was guarding Jonathan Isaac. He's left alone backdoor. He gets a dunk. And after the play, Mikal Bridges is screaming at Karl-Anthony Towns to rotate. To me, again, I always try to caveat this in the pod. It's so hard to pinpoint specific defensive errors and who the blame lies on, because I just don't know the scheme. I don't know what Mike Brown wants in specific plays, in specific situations. It seemed like that was on Gershon Yabusele or Mikal Bridges, and one of them should have stayed home. Cat could have potentially rotated. He's not going to recognize that all that often, just not really in his defensive bag. Jonathan Isaac got a dunk. And just the level of force the Magic played with for the second time in a row, all within a 10-day stretch, 8-day stretch since they last played Orlando. They got in the Knicks' head in this game. That continues to be very, very obvious with Karl-Anthony Towns, where he gets frustrated and commits stupid fouls. And like from the get-go in this game, I thought he would come out trying to set the tone and be physical. And you saw like early in the first quarter, this one, Jordan Clarkson tried to get an entry pass to Cat. And it was a bad, lazy pass, but Cat didn't make it easy on him because Cat just completely gave up positioning and let Goga Bitadze, who's a good athlete and a physical player, but Cat is bigger and I would think stronger than the guy. And Cat just got moved and Cat didn't fight. And it fits in spurts in this game. And we'll talk about it. Cat did fight and he did compete, but you just need 40 minutes in this game, 37 minutes of smart, composed, but also forceful play from Karl-Anthony Towns. And the issue too often from Cat is that you cannot get one without the other. If he's playing with force, he's playing stupid. And if he's playing smart, he's not playing with force. And that is the fatal flaw I come back to with Cat so often. But he was far from the only issue in this one. Josh Hart is just a disaster right now for the New York Knicks. And if you look at the box score, I wouldn't say that he was a disaster. 29 minutes, 12 points, 5 of 9 from the field, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, like no steals, no blocks. Okay, not a terrible game on paper. Here's where it becomes a terrible game. 1 for 5 from 3. Bunch of open looks. Orlando, second straight time they played the Knicks. They do not guard Josh Hart, and they instead double Cat, or they have Jonathan Isaac, who is like one of the, even though he's not quite what he was pre-injury, is still one of the more threatening help defenders in the NBA. And if you just allow him to play free safety, you are all of a sudden playing 4 and 5. And if Josh is not in turn like dramatically impacting the game as an offensive rebounder, and he had 1 offensive rebound in this one, you are essentially like, there is no downside to not guarding the guy. And this was a massive issue for the Knicks last year. And it was one we were hoping Mike Brown could begin to solve, maybe by encouraging Josh to shoot more. We thought Josh could potentially solve it by putting time into his shot in the offseason and being a better shooter. Obviously, the hand injury, which again is why I was hoping he would get the surgery, is affecting that. He's right now 35% from 3. That's actually the best number he shot on the Knicks since that first 25-game stretch. So it's less that he's shooting terribly and more that he continues to refuse to take them. Last 3 years, 3.2 threes a game, 3.3 threes per game. This season, 3.3 threes per game. Again, it's not working right now when Josh Hart is on the floor. The Knicks have a the Knicks are 15 points worse per 100 possessions when he's on the floor. That is 19th worst of all the players in the NBA. I would assume it's about 200, 300 players that have played at least 200 minutes this season. He is one of the, I don't want to say least impactful because he has a dramatic impact. It's a dramatic negative impact. He is one of the most harmful players to have on the court in the NBA right now. And context is necessary for that. Like, I do think like the first 5 games of the year he played when he wasn't in shape and he was just awful. Like, I wouldn't want to put that on him. I didn't get a chance to do a pre-show. We're going to likely do a full episode on Josh, maybe not this week, but next week, the next time me and XJ have a chance to be on together. I'd be curious to see what the numbers are like after those first 5 games. I would assume even as he started to shoot better, even as he said better nights, like I thought that second game against the Heat, he played awesome defense and played a really good game for the most part. His passive impact offensively is just crushing them right now. And especially on a night we don't have Landry Shamet and you don't have Deuce McBride and you don't have like a good to great shooter on the floor that's not Jalen Brunson. And it's not Karl-Anthony Towns right now. Like he continues to just shoot terribly. It is hard to offset the negative impact of playing Josh Hart. And again, I always feel bad crapping on the guy because he is generally like the one dude on the team whose fight you don't have to question on a game-to-game basis. And maybe like I'm focusing on these specifics and ignoring like the larger, more like corrosive problem. Corrosive is probably the word I'm looking for, which is that this team just seems disinterested in competing right now for Mike Brown, which is a real problem. And I don't want to just put that on Mike Brown because there were plenty of times last year. You look at the Oklahoma City games, you look at the Cleveland games, you look at the Boston games. They were completely disinterested in competing under Tom Thibodeau. But this was not a competitive effort for the New York Knicks. This was not a prideful effort from the New York Knicks. This team that we've loved in this Jalen Brunson era for the last 4 years now, because they don't give up, because they continue to fight, because even if they don't have the talent of a champion, they have the heart of a champion. And without that, there's just not a world where they compete with Oklahoma City. There's not a world where they compete with all the teams in the next tier, the Nuggets, the Rockets, the Cavs. Heck, I think the Pistons would beat the Knicks in 5 games right now with this version of the Knicks, without OG Anunoby. With OG, it would be a different series. This is not a championship basketball team. This is not a get out of the second round of the playoffs basketball team. I don't know if this is a get out of the first round of the playoffs basketball team, the one we saw last night. That's a big part of it. But circling back to Josh, it's honestly a similar issue to what we got from Cat, where he's competing hard, but he's not competing smart. Like, he picked up 3 fouls in the first quarter. Like, in the final 30 seconds of the first quarter, he picks up a dumb defensive foul going for a strip, and then Bane pushed off on a rebound, and Josh hacked him. That wasn't really Josh's fault, but that was 3 fouls in the first. And then he picks up the technical in the fourth, where he's frustrated with how the game is going and, like, wraps his arm around Jalen Suggs' neck. He was arguing he was just trying to push off him and get to the ball. It was a little ambiguous. It wasn't the most egregious, like, flagrant or technical I've ever seen. But in a game where your team's struggling, and you can't afford to, like, bleed points because your defense sucks, that's not what you need. And his defense was definitely not a standout in this one. Jalen also, like, he was bad on defense in this game. Basically, everyone who played was bad on defense. I don't know one player. Like, Mikal had a couple of good possessions. Diawara had a couple of good moments. Cat had one really good defensive possession where he slid his feet well. This was an ugly, ugly, ugly defensive game. And I just don't know how bad this team wants to be great right now. And that is very cliche. That is very, like, convenient phrasing to fall back on. But it goes back to how they were built. And I'm going to talk about in this next segment why I probably did not have enough appropriate fear and didn't give enough credence to how this team was built and what they chose to lean into this offseason. We'll get back to it in just a sec right here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at Gusto. Let's be real. No one starts a business for the joy of calculating tax withholdings or managing payroll spreadsheets, and that's where Gusto comes in to take the stress out of payroll, benefits, and HR so you can focus on running your business and supporting your team. Gusto is the all-in-one, remote-friendly payroll and HR platform that makes managing your team simple, transparent, and fast, whether you're hiring, onboarding, or paying employees. Gusto helps you do it all from one place without the hassle or hidden fees. Unlimited payroll runs for one monthly price, which means no surprise changes at the end of the month. Gusto's automated tools like offer letters, onboarding materials, and direct deposits save me hours every week. And knowing you can reach certified HR experts anytime gives you real peace of mind. So try Gusto today at gusto.com/LockedOnNBA and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's right, 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LockedOnNBA. One more time, that's gusto.com/LockedOnNBA. We also want to tell you about our friends over at Wayfair. The holiday season is right around the corner, and that means it's time to get your home ready. Whether you need more seating for guests, cozy new linens, or fun serveware for holiday hosting, Wayfair's Black Friday sale is here to help you make your space shine. And the best part, you don't have to wait. Wayfair's Black Friday deals are happening all month long with up to 70% off everything from sofas to spatulas. I recently upgraded our outdoor deck chairs. I was lucky enough to get a new apartment in the last 2 years, and we have a deck now. And I like to make it nice. I like to make it comfortable so I can sit outside, enjoy the beautiful weather when I'm in Arizona. And with those deck chairs from Wayfair, it just completely transforms the area. Browsing their site, it's incredibly easy to find pieces that actually fit my style. Nothing generic, just quality designs that feel personal. If you've ever hosted family for the holidays, you know how much of a difference a few new touches can make, and Wayfair makes it incredibly easy to do so. So don't miss out on early Black Friday deals. Head to wayfair.com now to shop Wayfair's Black Friday deal for up to 70% off. That's WAYFAIR.com. Sale ends December 7th. All right, what's up, guys? We are back here on Locked On Knicks, ranting and raving our way through a miserable loss for the New York Knicks to the Orlando Magic. I fall back on, I talked about the Josh Hart element of it. The Knicks are desperately missing OG Anunoby, and I probably should have saved it to put up on the screen here, but I will just read it out. We got a comment on XJ's really good episode on the OG injury. It is from Neo-Marioism, and this was 5 days ago, and it was prescient. Also, shout out to Neo-Marioism. Great comments on almost every episode. IMO, losing OG is a bigger blow than losing Brunson. OG is like the load-bearing wall of the defense, and without him, there is a huge loss in size and defense. Brunson's a better player easily, but what OG does is much harder to replicate on this roster. I think that is brilliantly said, and I think we are seeing that right now. The Knicks, since OG went out, I'm just counting the whole first Miami game, since he only played about 5 minutes in that one. The Knicks are 22nd in defensive rating, and that is playing the 13th best offense in the Miami Heat twice over that stretch. That is playing the Orlando Magic, who going to the night were the 17th best offense, now are the 15th best offense in the NBA, and that was playing the Dallas Mavericks, who are the worst offense in basketball, and that was without arguably their two best offensive players, or two of their 3 or 4 best offensive players, and Anthony Davis and Cooper Flagg. So the Knicks are looking like, when you take into account opponent, like they're going to be a bottom 5 defense without OG Anunoby, and that makes sense. Like even with OG, they were winning defensively on relatively thin margins, allowing putrid shot quality and benefiting from some opposing shooting luck that kind of balanced out after the Knicks had really bad luck and their opponents were really hot to start the season. OG Anunoby on the year, just to this point, and it's obviously been made very clear without him, and this stat has been exaggerated without him since he's playing 0 minutes per game, and that puts more strain on other guys. But they are 22 points better per 100 possessions when he's on the floor. I mentioned Josh is 19th worst out of guys in the NBA in differential who've played at least 200 minutes. OG is 6th best of anyone in the NBA who's played at least 200 minutes. So he's been one of the most impactful players in the NBA. And to Neo-Marioism's point, that is just about just as much about the fact that like OG is obviously a brilliant player and a brilliant defender and like a integral piece in keeping the machine moving offensively. And also the fact that the Knicks are utterly bereft of replacements. And there was a reason why Mitchell Robinson was guarding Franz Wagner, though I disagree with it. I think that even if he'd gotten bullied a good amount, that 100% should have been Mikal Bridges. Maybe you give Mo Diawara a shot when he's on the floor. I think you challenge Mikal Bridges, who at times did well on Cade Cunningham last year. At times, though, he largely got cooked, did okay against Jason Tatum last year. You challenge Mikal Bridges to hold up in that matchup with Franz Wagner versus Mitch, who just doesn't have the foot speed, doesn't have a chance. And in particular, like if Orlando ran a screening action with Franz, there was one play where they did this, and Mitch has to switch and recover in space to someone like Desmond Bane. That was an easy layup. It was a blow by and a layup because Mitch just, as much as he's mobile for a man his size, like at this point in his career, rookie Mitch, I think he probably would have fouled out in 10 minutes, but he would have had some highlights guarding Franz Wagner. This version of Mitchell Robinson, utterly inequipped to guard Franz Wagner. Mikal Bridges, he's probably too weak, probably too small, but at least he can slide his feet and use his length and make things challenging for Franz. OG, if there's a player in the world, maybe outside of someone like Giannis, who's built to guard someone like Franz, it is OG Anunoby. And the Knicks just have no replacement for him. And then you look at what they did this summer. And to be fair, they had very limited money to work with. But bringing Guerschon Yabusele, bringing in Jordan Clarkson, I think, for the money, has proven to be a pretty good signing and has proven to be really helpful for the Knicks on the offensive side of the floor, by and large. I should probably look at the numbers on the season. Let's see what is they're actually minus 10 when he's on the floor, and the offense has been 3 points worse. So maybe I'm getting caught up a little too much in the he cooked him anti-film or anti-analytics movement. But Clarkson's had some moments offensively, and I think that number's more about Jalen Brunson being off the floor. Anyways, point is, they have been quite bad when Clarkson's on the floor. They've actually been pretty decent when Guerschon's on the floor. The defense has been 14 points better when he's on the floor. I think that might just be small sample size. Point is, they brought in 2 guys who were on some level defensive liabilities this summer, and they didn't really like double down on improving their defense. And I was, I will take the L on that, at least for the time being. I was kind of all in on them improving their playmaking, improving their shooting. I thought that was going to be an aggregate win for the Knicks, and it has not really helped them the way that I thought it would. The thing I will take credit for is I talked a lot last season and this summer about how last season might have been the year for the Knicks, and that was largely predicated on the fact they just had incredible health luck last season. And if that went away this year, that the Knicks were going to be in some trouble. And lo and behold, OG Anunoby's out, and this team does not have any way to replicate what he could do. And you compare that to other contenders, like look at the Oklahoma City Thunder, missing Jalen Williams, who objectively is probably as great as OG is probably a slightly better player than OG Anunoby, right? Maybe slightly worse defensively, though he was the one of the two that made an all-defensive team last year, and offensively is just a much better on-ball player. And Oklahoma City's, 16-1 without Jalen Williams, while the Knicks completely fall apart without OG Anunoby, and that just tells you, like, the gulf in the rosters between the two. And the bet in that the Knicks being competitive with a team like Oklahoma City is that in a playoff series where you're only playing your top 7 or 8 guys, the difference between guys 10 through 15 would be mitigated a little bit in the regular season. That can really be exposed. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we are going to get into a little bit more, like go one by one through the guys and how they each played and the concern level on Landry Shamet's injury. We'll get into it all in just a sec right here on Locked On Knicks. But first, I want to tell you about our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel's live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you could even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making the late push. Of late, I would bet on other teams to make a late push against the New York Knicks. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So I want to go a little glass half full, at least for parts of this last segment. Like I think the lesson I've learned, and I've referenced it a bunch of times doing this podcast for 7 or 8 years now, is to try not to overreact to a single game. And ones like this are hard to, especially after they've twice had these types of performances against the Orlando Magic specifically, and like a tough physical team. Again, we are just a year removed from the Knicks having 10 of these performances against the Thunder, against the Cavs, against the Celtics. They didn't get to prove that it was a fluke against the Cavs or the Thunder. They didn't get to prove against the Celtics that when push came to shove in the playoffs and the Knicks were fully healthy, fully locked in, and they got some help from Boston's injuries, specifically the one to Kristaps Porzingis, the Knicks were able to compete in a 7-game series against those teams. And I do think there is another level here for the New York Knicks. And like, real depth issues have cropped up at this point, right? When you're missing 3 of your top 7 players, 8 players, and Deuce, OG, Shamet, like we could rank them. We could have a conversation about that somewhere in that range, though. And Landry Shamet has obviously gone from someone who was like a fringe rotation piece to the Knicks to, in Mike Brown's mind, the first guy who starts whenever anyone is out, seemingly. Like, he has just become an absolutely essential rotation piece. And also, I think even though he is a flawed defensive player, a tone setter on that side of the ball, because his effort is consistent in a way that may be outside of Deuce McBride and perhaps OG when he's healthy, and Mitch to some extent, like, is just not really replicated on this roster. And like this Knicks roster that I thought was really well constructed coming to the year is built on some thin blocks, and I kind of wish we'd see someone like Kevin McCullough Jr. Tosan Uwoma maybe could help with his effort. Pacom Dadier almost checked in, and then there ended up being a challenge on that play. I mean, that rest bought Mike Brown time to not do that. Instead of playing Mo Diawara for 2 minutes in this one and then take him out, he ended up playing 10. I think about half of that was in garbage time. And we saw some highs from Mo. We saw some major lows from Mo. That might tell you why Mike Brown is only comfortable having him out there for 2 minutes at a time. The other guy I look to in these situations is Mikal Bridges. And I realize I'm asking for something I'm just not going to get from Mikal Bridges. And I occasionally come to the same realization with Cat, where I at times want Mikal to function like a foundational piece, because the Knicks traded the equivalent of what you would trade for a foundational piece to their roster. And that means when guys are out, when the chips are down, I want him to take 20 shots. And that is just not in his DNA at this point, to go out there and take 20 shots, even on nights where he's really efficient. He was 7 of 11 in this game. He took just 2 free throws. I wish there was, I feel kind of weird that there's not just a stat for like total shot attempts, including ones that result in free throws. Like, I'm always curious to see that on a game-to-game basis. But when you take into account that Mikal barely shoots free throws, his shot attempt numbers are ridiculously low. I was texting with XJ about this last night, and he suggested that there should be like some kind of incentive for his contract for every game he gets to 20 shots. And he was joking, but I would legitimately like for the Knicks to put that in for Mikal Bridges. Like, look at these last few games. He since OG's gone out, 21 shots against the Heat, 6 for 21. That's awesome. Needs to shoot that much. 9 for 14 against Miami, 7 to 13, 7 to 11, 64%, 54%, 64%, shooting well from three in 2 of those 3 games. Take more shots, my guy. He should be taking minimum 16, 17 shots a game, especially if he's not getting to the line, right? Like, if they're not free throws, like, get them up. Like, you are one of the efficient options on this team. Go shoot 10 threes. He's a big guy. Like, with a high release, he can get off threes. I know the limitation there is that he's not really an off the dribble 3-point shooter. And when you're not cracking the defense, and when you have Josh out there who's not even being guarded, it is a little bit harder for him to get to high volumes from three. And in some ways, that tells you that Mikal's shot attempts are a litmus for the health of this offense. And when they're playing with pace and they're getting into the dribble handoff game, which for whatever reason they maybe just thrown off by the Shamet injury, but they were not getting into their handoff game with any kind of pace. They essentially never got out in transition. And some of that was the Magic's defense. Some of that was the Magic's ball pressure. Some of that was that they were pulling the ball out of the basket every time. Though there have been times this year where we've seen the Knicks score in 4 seconds or 5 seconds after a make. And that was that verve, that energy. It was not there. Orlando, again, was certainly a part of that. But when you look at Mikal's night and you look at the fact that even though he was shooting well, he only takes 5 threes in this game. That is on some level indicative of the Knicks offense not being in a very healthy place. And Mikal, again, I wanted to be a foundational piece. I think I've come to accept that what the Knicks traded for was an elite supplementary piece. And when they made the trade, I kind of framed it that way. And I was okay with that because they had the infrastructure to support that and to survive that. And when you don't have Julius Randle and what he can do on a night-to-night basis to create shots for other guys, and he's busy. Again, I would be complaining about his defense if he was here, but he's busy having an all-NBA season. And frankly, like, I think clearly a better season than Cat. I know XJ would probably push back on that and talk about Cat's passive impact, and that's true, but at least on the ball, he's having a much better season than Cat is right now. And Cat is just inconsistent, possession to possession, quarter to quarter. He had a great stretch in this game in the third quarter where he did get physical, and like he had, even in the fourth, like with 7 minutes left, he had just this great crash at one point where he battled for a rebound between 2 guys, little pump fake, pivot, should have been an and one on a hook shot. But before that, like, I didn't really notice he was on the court. Performance again in the third quarter, he had some moments, like one where he burst by Suggs, switched hands, one-handed dunk, got to the free throw line 11 times. So I got to give Cat credit because no one else on the Knicks did that, made 10 of them. That was really good. And again, he was hurt. Every time Josh Hart was on the floor, he was dealing with double teams. There were just dumb moments from Cat, like a blatant moving screen. At one point, continues to just miss open looks from three on pick and pops. Shaq had a stat the other day. He's shooting terribly on trail threes. He was 2 for 6 from 3 in this game for the season now. I don't know if it's updated since last night. It's still 43% from the field, 31.8% from 3. Like, at some point, it's going to turn around. It's frustrating that it hasn't happened yet. I already talked about Mitch. Jalen, statistically, an incredible game, 33 points, 11 assists. 2 turnovers. I don't think his impact matched those numbers necessarily. And there were stretches where, again, he was the one guy, like, he had 23 points in the first half. He was matching Franz Wagner shot for shot, going up against, like, arguably the top point guard defender in the NBA, or in that conversation. Maybe it was stepped down from someone like Alex Caruso, but Jalen Suggs, like, I love that rivalry the two of them have. It's like it's our new version of what Sabonis and Randall was when Sabonis was on the Pacers. Like, there's a mutual hatred there between those two. And there were times where Brunson was just absolutely getting into his bag and cooking, like an ISO step back 3. One where he blew by him on a closeout and hit like a leaning pull-up jumper. It was a really generous call from the officials. I thought it was a touch foul. Mike Breen was on it all night, complaining about the officiating more than I've ever heard him complain, but getting into his bag with like the mid post up back down on Suggs into like a half pivot, Dirk fade. Like, there was some sick footwork, some sick shot making. You saw the full arsenal from Jalen. As the 11 assists indicate, there were certainly stretches of this game where he was a willing passer, hit Mitch for 2 different lobs, and I think one other time on a slip pass for a dunk. Like, that was encouraging. Brunson at times is just reticent, even when Mitch is rolling wide open down the middle. We've talked about it for years, where Brunson just doesn't see it, and it makes it much harder for him to throw those passes when you don't have Shamet, when you have Deuce, or when you don't have Deuce, you don't have 5 out spacing to get to that. but still, like, he had good moments passing the basketball. I just thought there were times where he forced it, and there were times, like, there was a play where he dropped Suggs, and he just forced up a three because he wanted the highlight, and it either got blocked or he airballed it. But I thought, like, in a game where, like, the Knicks should have been desperate to win and desperately competing down the stretch, I did not really see that in this one from Jalen. So I think if you just see the box score stats, I don't think it was quite that level of performance from Jalen Brunson. There were stretches I was really frustrated with him. I thought it was a really good game from Jordan Clarkson. And again, maybe there's stuff I'm missing defensively. There were a few chucks that you would like back, but some of the playmaking from him was quite just like impactful, and some really good moments where he pushed the ball into the lane, like had this great Nash dribble at one point that get Mikal like a wide open three, and the Knicks just like are starving to find those shots. Another play where he drove and dropped it off to Yabu for a layup, like in heavy traffic. Like he had 5 assists. It was his best passing game of the season. Some of the shot making at times was really good. Again, the defense was hit or miss at different points. The off-ball stuff from him has been a pleasant surprise this season. Again, the numbers have largely indicated that the Knicks are not great when he's on the floor. I've seen, just from my mind's eye, good stuff from him. Josh Hart, I critiqued him a lot. He had some good moments, especially in the first few plays of this game where he created a 3 for Jalen offensive rebound, had a pump and go drive where he created a 4-point play. For Jalen Brunson, defensively, again, dumb fouls, Franz cooking him at times, badly bricking some open threes. It was like, there was one moment that really got to me. It was actually right before the flagrant. And I think this is why he was so frustrated and why that bothered me so much. And I should have mentioned earlier and I forgot to. He just refused to take an open opportunity to sprint into the lane for a layup. And that is like the antithesis of the Josh Hart that I know and love, because it was open. The Magic big were scrambled, and that is a classic play where Josh sees a lane that no one else sees, and it's just running like a halfback dive basically, and goes right to the hole, muscles it in. He gets a layup, and he hesitated, he paused, he tried to pull it out. Suggs stripped him, and then he was belatedly aggressive because he was frustrated with himself for being passive initially. So that sucked. Mitch, one final number, because I forgot to mention, I got it from Synergy. Defensively, in 33 possessions of defense where he was involved, he allowed 1.941 points per possession. That is essentially the equivalent of allowing 97% shooting. If you just go by straight field goal percentage, if you don't go effective field goal percentage, 97% shooting. That's like just uniquely poor defensive game from Mitchell Robinson. That was horrific. The Knicks tried some zone. It did not work well. I actually pulled the numbers on Synergy, and I thought the Knicks zone numbers were just going to be terrible for the season. They're actually fine. They allow like 100 and like they have 112 defensive rating. That would be top 5 in the league just across all possessions when they play defense. And it's interesting, these teams have shot great against them. They shot 51% from the field, 65% true shooting. What offsets that is there have been 20 of the 57 possessions of zone they played, they forced turnovers or didn't allow a shot on 14 of them. So that is offset. Like when teams get a shot off against the Knicks in zone, it is typically a very good shot. And it usually goes in. When the Knicks find a way to not allow a shot, things go pretty well for them in zone defense. But the zone did not really work for them. And the Knicks are getting, I think it's a sign of desperation. It's a sign that Mike Brown feels like he does not have great personnel on that side of the ball when OG Anunoby's not on the court. So we're still awaiting an update on Landry Shamet. We will see what that ultimately is. The quote from Mikal Bridges after the game was, and it looked like a separated shoulder on the court, and Landry knew immediately, was in pain, grabbed the shoulder, waddled off. Quote from Mikal, dealing with probably the same shoulder thing, praying for the best and hoping everything's okay. Definitely going to need him. I saw him at half. He said he was okay. As long as he's okay, his mental is okay. He knows more than me, but he's in good spirits. So best wishes to Landry Shamet. Hope he gets well soon. Again, he is like the one guy on the Knicks, I think, embodying the attitude they need. And we're going to learn a lot about this team because we've seen low moments in seasons past, and they have generally like come back with their best effort in quick succession when that's happened. We'll find out if that's the case when they play the Nets on Monday. But until then, this has been Locked On Knicks. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Enjoy your Monday. We'll talk to you soon right here on Locked On Knicks.